Welcome to another episode of From the Hart. We are all the way now to episode 3. We've interviewed Ken Blanchard. We did our little leadership moment last episode.
That's a big leadership moment.
Leadership moment, absolutely. There you go. Well, little as far as the time.
Yes.
Shorter than an interview. And today we're going to be sharing the interview that we did with Garry Ridge, the CEO of WD40, and a very large Fortune 500 company headquartered in San Diego, California. I've known Garry for about a decade or so. He's spoken at a few events that I've done, and he was kind enough to spend some time with us that we'll share here in a few moments. But I'd be curious, Todd, you met him for the first time as we interviewed him and spoke with him for this episode. What were your thoughts or takeaways from that interview?
Well, first of all, just speaking to someone at that level, like that's stratosphere status, right? And the fact that he was super personable. We mentioned humility, was one of the things that came to mind when we talked about the interview. But I think his focus on people just blew me away, because that's what I believe to be true, but I'm not even close to that stratosphere level. And to hear somebody at that level to confirm that was huge.
Yeah, and I get the feeling that he knows his people. He's got a couple thousand employees, and I get that. When we asked him what's a day in the life look like, and he'll talk about that here in the podcast, it's getting to know his people. Right. He really does. And he shared with us that, the 3 areas of his focus are obviously the stockholders. They're publicly held, so that has to be a focus. Right. The customer, because without customers, no one exists. But the main focus was his people, and that really is everything else. Take care of the people, and the rest takes care of itself. Yeah. And it was really easy to feel the authenticity as he talked about that.
Very authentic. Yeah. And the differentiation in just the language of how you use between tribe and team, that just, and he does a great job explaining it. I'm sure he does it all the time, which he does.
He does.
But it just, I think there's so many things for people to take away from this, to apply on any level, right?
Yeah, and this will be a nice follow-up to our first episode with Ken Blanchard. Ken's obviously the servant leadership guru. Garry met Ken as a student in a master's program at University of San Diego.
Didn't they write a book together?
They have. They've written a book together. We'll talk about that in the podcast a little bit as well. And we just hope that you'll enjoy this next episode coming up now From the Hart. Sit back and enjoy our conversation with Garry Ridge, the CEO and chairman of WD40.
Hi, I'm Garry Ridge, and you're listening to From the Hart with...
Garry, why don't you just start off, just tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from. I've got some questions for you as far as your role at WD40, and I know you've been there for quite some time, but the company culture is certainly one of the big deals when you think about WD40, and I think we'll dive into that a bit. But just first and foremost, welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, g'day, Ed. That'll give people a bit of a hint of where I'm from.
There you go.
My homeland is Australia.
Yeah.
And I started with WD-40 in Australia in 1987, opened our Australian subsidiary there, moved to the United States in 1994 to head up our global expansion program. At that stage, WD-40 was very much a dominant US brand with a lot of opportunities in a lot of countries around the world. And then in 1997, our CEO then retired, and I got the opportunity to lead this amazing group of people to where we are today, which is a global company that takes the blue and yellow brand with a little red top to 176 countries around the world.
Wow.
And, we exist to create positive, lasting memories in everything we do. We solve problems, we make things work smoothly, and most importantly, we create opportunities not only for outside, but more importantly for the people inside this wonderful organization.
Yeah, a friend of mine shared with me recently that there's 2 things in this world that we need: duct tape and WD-40. And I'm sure you've seen it. If it moves and it shouldn't, use duct tape. And if it doesn't move and it should, use WD-40, right? So you've got at least half the market right there.
Sounds good to me.
So that really builds up a question for me that's been on my mind a lot lately. I've studied a lot about you and about your culture and the tribal environment there, which I'd like to get into in a bit. But how do you take what by most of the world would think is a non-sexy product, if you will, like a WD-40, and turn it into the type of a company where your culture is referred to by the Ken Blanchards and Simon Sinek's of the world as the role model for what a company culture should be like? Can you talk a little bit about what it was like when you took over, and then how that transition took place to where I've read your numbers, 93, 94% of engagement with your employees or your tribe members. Curious about that journey.
Yeah, sure. Well, when I got to lead the company was a great company. There's no doubt about that. Those that went before me did some really great work. The thing that was different is that we needed to be a different company because we were moving from being a company that was really very focused on the United States to being focused on the world. We'd become a very strong brand here, and for us to grow, we needed to spread our wings. And back in 1997, when I became CEO, I kind of looked around. I said, what is it that we really need to do? And a couple of things became very clear to me. The first one was that micromanagement wasn't scalable. And if we were to have a group of people who went out every day, made a contribution to something bigger than themselves, learned something new, felt safe, and went home happy, we as leaders had to create that environment.
Sure.
So I was a little bit lost in that. I think, I hunted around and I went back to school.
That's right.
And I went to the University of San Diego, and I enlisted in the Master of Science in Executive Leadership program. And that's where I met my dear friend, Ken Blanchard.
Yeah.
And Ken was my professor and in that program. And this became clear that if we were to be able to develop this culture, we needed to set people free. We needed to remove fear. We needed to have a clarity around what our purpose was, and we needed to have a set of values that really guided people along the way. So I started to play with all those concepts way back in 1999 and 2000. And what worked, we did more of, and what wasn't as successful, we did less of. And
Seems pretty logical.
Really comes down to some simple things. Really having a commitment to the fact that it is all about the people,
sure,
having a clear purpose, having a set of values, making sure that you have a clear strategy, that you execute well, and that you really focus on learning. The number one responsibility of a leader is to be a learner and a teacher. And our job as leaders is to help people step into the best version of their personal self. So, it wasn't by accident, it was by intent, but the road was unclear. To me, culture is values plus behavior times consistency. A lot of companies have values, some don't. Some companies are focused on what are the right behaviors, some aren't. And most companies aren't consistent on this path, and that's why they fail to create cultures that are enduring over time.
So a lot of false starts, but they can't really continuously keep that going. So what would you tell a company that might be in that situation where maybe their employee engagement is low, or they've just had trouble really getting that culture set up so that they can create a workplace where people enjoy going to work every day? What might be some of the first things that you would share with some of those organizations?
Well, it starts at the top. I would put a mirror in front of the leader and have them look in it and say, what do you see? Do you see a committed servant leader? Or do you see my friend Al, the soul-sucking CEO, who's all about ego and not empathy, it's all about him, not everyone else, who knows all the answers, who's about dominance, who's about command and control, not freedom and learning. So that's where it starts. You have to have a commitment to it being all about the people.
What does a day in the life for Garry Ridge look like when you're in the office every day?
My day starts really early. I'm normally up around 4 a.m, and I make myself a cup of coffee and I go to my home office, and I take my dog Max with me, and he comes and sits by my side, and I have my time of solace and I prepare my thinking for the day. I try to get out of the way stuff that doesn't matter, so that when I do get into our TP here in San Diego or any other office that I'm going to around the world, I'm there for the people. So my first few hours is really about being with the people, understanding, talking to them, hearing what's on their mind. Michael Bungay Stainer, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he wrote a great book called The Coaching Habit. And the first two questions are, what's on your mind? And the second one is, and what else? And it's amazing how much
gets them to really think
by just being able to ask those questions and listen to the people, because they have the answers.
Right.
We don't have the answers. I'm consciously incompetent. In most things, I'm probably wrong and roughly right.
There you go. It's nice to recognize that, right?
Yeah.
So you alluded to the teepee, which takes me back to the earlier comment about the tribe. Talk to us a little bit about that, how that mentality. I know you come from Australia. Tribe is big down there. I've read a book recently by a good friend of mine, Dave Logan, called Tribal Leadership.
Oh, yeah, I've read Dave's book.
Yeah, Dave's a good man, good colleague, and good close friend. But I know your philosophy of tribal leadership was before that book came out. I'd be curious to just find out how that mentality starts, and do your people really refer to themselves as tribe as you do?
Yeah, sure. One of the most sought after desires we have as human beings is to belong.
Right.
And if you think of Maslow's hierarchy to self-actualization, the first two kind of rungs in that journey are you safe and will you survive? So most organizations provide safety and they provide means of survival. They pay people into work, etc. The next one is belonging or love, and this is where it all falls apart.
Sure.
Because organizations, unfortunately, don't create that atmosphere of belonging where people truly feel like this is where I want to be. So way back when we started thinking about it, we started thinking about teams. And it's interesting because as I think about this now, and having just read Simon Sinek's latest book, The Infinite Game, he talks about the finite game and the infinite game. So a team is something that is finite. You play on a team to win a certain game. There's a start time, a finish time, there's a set of rules, there's a referee, and when the whistle blows, there's a winner and there's someone who didn't
You can
win.
look up at the scoreboard, right?
A tribe is something that is in the infinite game. Its role is to stay in the game over time. So when we looked about the difference between tribes and teams, we said you belong to a tribe, you play on a team.
Okay.
So then we went back and we looked at what are the attributes then that actually have kept tribes together over these thousands and thousands and thousands of years, where tribalism goes back to the beginning of mankind. I like one of the definitions of Sebastian Junger in his book Tribes. He said, the earliest and most basic definition of community, of tribe, would be the group of people that both help feed and help defend. So that's how we thought about it. So then I looked at the Indigenous Australians, the Aborigines and the Fijian Islanders, and I started to research and talk to them. I went to Fiji. I sat with tribal leaders in islands in Fiji. I interviewed Indigenous Australians to try and understand what were the attributes of tribalism that were important. And interestingly, number one attribute of tribalism is learning.
Interesting.
If you go back thousands of years and we were observing a group of Indigenous Australians at a tribal meeting, what would you see? You would see the tribal leader teaching the young tribe members how to throw a boomerang. Why? Because if they couldn't throw a boomerang, they wouldn't survive.
Sure.
So what's our job as a tribal leader? To be a learner and a teacher. Our job is to prepare people for the best they can be. Like, as you know, the book that Ken Blanchard and I wrote.
Right.
We're not here to mark your paper. We're here to help you get an A. Life is about helping people get A's. The next thing we learned in attributes was values. The values are there to set people free. They're future focused. There's specialized skills within tribes. They're warriors.
Yeah.
And there's celebration. So these are the attributes. And to answer your question, do people in WD40 call themselves tribe members? You bet.
Absolutely, they do. Yeah.
All the time. Yeah. You will hear us in any one of our operations around the world. The two things you would hear the most is, I just had a learning moment and I'm a WD40 tribe member. This is my tribe.
And I've heard you talk about how you either win or you learn. And
That's
I really like that philosophy as well. I've heard great coaches talk about that as well. Talk about the onboarding process. When you bring somebody on board, what's your process like to make sure that they're a fit into that culture, into that tribal environment culture that you've created?
Well, let's talk about the pre-boarding process because that's most important.
Okay.
The actual recruiting process. We recruit for values. And if you were to go onto our website, onto our careers page, the first thing that pops up is our values. And it basically says, if you can't align yourself with these values, don't talk to us. So we start with values. We can help people increase their competency around any particular discipline through formal training, but it's values that are important to us. So as you join the tribe, you're welcomed. It's made sure that you feel like you are part of this organization, and then through the process you learn more about what's important to us, how to make decisions, how to be brave, how to be curious, and we like to give feedback as well.
Sure.
We believe in the 4 pillars of care, candor, accountability, and responsibility. And candor to us is no lying, no faking, no hiding. I believe most people don't lie. I
Sure.
believe intentionally or unintentionally people fake and hide. And why do they fake and hide? It's because there's a great deal of fear around whatever they're dealing with. So we want to build trust with our people, and that's why they say that 99% of the people say they love to tell people they work here. I think it's some basic human stuff, Ed. Treat them with respect
Sure.
and dignity. Show them a promise of tomorrow. Let them make a contribution to something bigger than themselves. Help them learn, and make sure that you do everything you can to let them go home happy.
And you've created an environment where there is no fear. If they make a mistake, they know they're going to be treated like a human being who is learning and contributing to,
as long as it's not immoral or illegal.
Exactly. There you go. There you go. And your onboarding process pretty much almost guarantees that you're bringing in high quality individuals as well. Take us back a little bit. Pre your time at WD40, obviously to have the emotional intelligence to go and talk to these tribal leaders, as you alluded to earlier, go back before that to your childhood. Who were some of the mentors and the people that you looked up to where our soul tends to recognize truth when we see it? So obviously there's something in this tribal environment that has struck a chord with you early on, that's now the culture that you've created at WD40. Where did that start? Where do you think that, was it upbringing with your folks, or was it a great mentor or leader as a coach when you were a child? Is there someone that you can point to early in your life that you have looked at their philosophies and character and tried to emulate that in your own leadership style?
I think there's not one person. There's a group of people.
Okay.
Now, my father worked for the same company for 50 years, from when he was 15 to 65.
So
I was the youngest of 4 in the family. There was 12 or 13 years difference between my brother and I, my next brother and I. So I was a late arriver. So I actually grew up in a house of adults. I didn't have young brothers and sisters.
Okay.
And my dad was coming to the end of his business career by the time I was leaving high school and getting into mine. So Dad was always there to, he had some very sage advice. And, a fair day's work for a fair day's pay was one of them. He had a very impressive work ethic, and I think that was important. But he was also the family guy that you could joke with. My mum was someone who was really the adventurer. She'd always be the one that would be challenging to go forward. And my mum lived till she was 99 years and 9 months old.
Wow.
And she only passed away about 5 years ago. And she was the ultimate giver of unconditional love, which I call feedback.
That's great.
And there's only 2 words you need to know when your mum's in the 90s, and that's yes, mum. And she would always be willing to give you feedback, whether you wanted it or not. And then, as I shared in the book that I wrote with Ken, there were a number of people that I had as I was growing up, and from working in the local sports store to working in the local hardware store to working in the local dry cleaners to working on a milk truck, each of them taught me different things. One story that I reflect on is I worked at a sports store, and the guy who owned the sports store, his name was Jack Lambert, and part of what the sports store did in a suburb of Sydney was it repaired tennis rackets. And one day I walked out to the back of his workshop, and Mr. Lambert had very large hands with calluses on them. And the calluses came from, in those days, stringing the racket and actually twisting a device they had to tighten it. Then he put a spike in the side and actually tie it off. And each one of these was a painstaking thing to do.
Sure.
As I watched, and I said to him one day, Mr. Lambert, why are you hurting yourself doing that? And he gave me some feedback. He said, someone is going to depend on my work tomorrow.
Wow. What an attitude.
And that someone was one of Australia's greatest tennis players that was actually going to go to play in one of the finals of the Australian Open. And Mr. Lambert was taking so much time. And my learning moment from that was, it's a bit like who folded your parachute.
Yeah. Good book.
We need to make sure that we understand that the work we do,
right,
someone's going to depend on it. So there were many people that I benefited from over time. And I think the other one was a professor called Professor Julius Sumner Miller. He had a show on television in Australia, and he was this curly, white-haired professor that had an American accent, and he used to wear a white coat, and he'd do all these funky little experiments on TV when you came home from school, like sucking an egg into a bottle. And, but he always ended with this: why is it so? Why is it so? And that stuck with me all my life, where I asked him, why is that like that? Why is it so? Why should it be that way? So often a belief is a thought that we trust is true, but so often the facts that are around that belief are not necessarily accurate. So we have to be curious and ask those questions in a caring way.
So many questions come up in my mind as you're talking. I love the why is it so. You get to see a lot of different companies around your travels around the world, your time with WD40. I know you do a lot of coaching with others as well. What's the fundamental difference that you see in your people? You talked about the onboarding and their values when they come in, and certainly the culture you've created at the organization at WD40. Describe for us, if you can, the difference in what you see in a lot of the companies that you visit versus WD40, just kind of how people approach work, how they approach leadership.
The number one killer is leaders don't care. Okay. And care to us is empathy. And empathy to us is when the development and the progress and the advancement and well-being of someone else more important to you than your own ego. And so many organizations that I see where ego eats empathy instead of empathy eating ego. That's the number, emotional intelligence or ego, right, or lack of emotional intelligence, I believe, through my observations over time, is the biggest killer of culture. Number one, it starts there.
Sure.
And then purpose. We sell, or as you started the conversation, right, we sell oil in a can. How boring is that? Well, we don't, right. Our why statement is we exist to create positive, lasting memories. So when we talk about everything we do in the company, we're talking about how will that create a positive, lasting memory? When a auto mechanic or an artisan or a tradesman is using our product in a factory in China or in Mexico or in Russia or in Germany, is that going to create a positive, lasting memory for them? And will it help them do their job? Will it make their job easier? Will it help them be better at what they do? And if they are, that memory is, we're going to create a better life for their support. So again, its purpose is so important. And then finally, and more probably that should rise to the top, is there a set of hierarchical values that set people free? Because values are there to set people free.
Sure.
And our values are hierarchical, and they're there, and anybody can make any decision they want in the organization as long as they reflect on the reason why we exist and our values. So they don't have to go, as Ken Blanchard would say, quacking up the hierarchy.
Yeah, the quack, quack, quack as he talks.
Yes.
Exactly. Talk about that word empowerment. It's a word that's loosely used. We've been talking about it and studying it for decades in leadership. I've read most of the leadership books out there about the topic. But talk about what an employee or a tribe member at WD40 might tell me about the word empowerment.
Freedom.
Okay.
Clarity, transparency, recognition, guidance. So empowerment is really about giving people the environment and the tools to be able to make decisions in the absence of fear. That's how you empower people. You can't make anybody do anything, Ed.
Right.
They have to want to do it.
Absolutely.
And so what does that mean? It means, okay, is there transparency, clarity? Have you given them as much free space without fear as you possibly can? why we say we don't make mistakes. We have learning moments. A learning moment is a positive or negative outcome of any situation that has to be openly and freely shared to benefit all people.
I heard Phil Jackson, who was obviously one of the great basketball coaches of all time. I think the season that the Bulls won 72 games, they obviously lost 10. They play an 82-game season. He said his favorite practices were the day after the loss because he felt like the team might have been a little bit more teachable after losing 10 times as opposed to the 72 victories. I don't know if I believe that or not, but talk about when you've had some struggles or some losses or some challenges. Are there any learning moments that jump out at you, either in your history or maybe your executive team or just any of the folks within the tribe there at WD40 that really stand out for you?
I think one of the huge learning moments in life is getting comfortable with the three most important words in life. And they are, I don't know. And that was a great learning moment for me many years ago to just get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
As I often say, in most situations, I'm probably wrong and roughly right. and getting a big learning moment is just getting comfortable with those three words. I don't know. And once you admit that, you'll find the answers. You'll gather the people around you can help you find the answers, and you'll move forward. And the other thing is getting comfortable with it's okay. We're just these simple human beings bumbling our way down the walkway of life, bumping into stuff. And sometimes we take ourselves a bit seriously. Sometimes we're hard on ourselves for the wrong reasons. Again, as long as you know where you want to go, then it's up to us to create that path that's as safe as it can be to get there. And those that follow us feel that way as well.
I love it. So you have obviously stockholders because you're publicly held. You have tribe members that are there with you every day fighting the good fight. You have customers out there all over the world. Where would you say, if you had to put percentages, you spend the majority of your time? I think I know what you're going to say.
With our people.
With your people, okay.
If you take care of your people, they'll take care of your customers, and your customers will take care of your shareholders.
Okay. What types of feedback do you get? Obviously, there's a scorecard when you look at the ticker on the stock exchange, but do you get any kind of pushback or feedback from customers or stakeholders who feel like maybe your focus on your people? You and I understand that. We understand what culture is and that really is where your leadership needs to be. But do you tend to get any kind of pushback at all from any of those other two parties?
Well, not from the shareholders. They've
Sure.
had a compounded annual growth rate of total shareholder return over a 20-year period of 15% a year. Our market cap's gone from 250 million to 2.2 billion. So they don't have a lot to
not much to complain about there. Absolutely.
And interestingly enough, that growth in our value as a company absolutely correlates to the growth of our employee engagement. If you were to graph those two things over 20 years, they're in lockstep. Interestingly enough, Ed, in the last year or two, more and more of the people that we talk to who are investing in companies that are wanting to build an enduring company over time are more interested in our culture. Way back, when it was one of the challenges public companies have is the guy on Wall Street called short-sighted Sam, and short-sighted Sam thinks in 90-day intervals,
right?
Which is very dangerous. And you put Al, the soul-sucking CEO, and short-sighted Sam together, you might have a short-term win, but you've got a long-term train wreck.
You got a tough culture
as far as the
too.
culture's concerned.
Yeah.
So we're very conscious of the type of investors who want to invest in a company like ours. Who we're an enduring company. Our leadership promise is we want to build an enduring company that will be proud to hand on to others. I've been here 33, 34 years.
Right.
We're going to be proud. Our leadership team is going to be proud to hand this business to the new leadership team who are in our organization now, once it's our time to do something different.
Right.
And I wrote in our shareholder letter, I think it was 2 years ago, in the shareholder letter, I wrote a paragraph to our shareholders, and it said, our job is to make sure we create an environment where our tribe members wake up each day inspired to go to work, feel safe while they are there, and return home at the end of the day fulfilled by the work they do, feeling they have learned something new and contributed to something bigger than themselves. This is the world we envision. If we can create this world for our people, they will take care of our customers, and that will in turn take care of our stockholders. That's an absolute paragraph out of my letter to my shareholders a year or so ago.
And the proof is in the pudding, like you said. All they have to do is look at the results and show that that culture and that philosophy works.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
It's not
that.
easy. It's simple, not easy. Time's not your friend.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
We're not perfect. We're not great. It's a great place. It's not necessarily for everyone, but
sure. You know, from the fact that we've known each other for 8 or 9 years, that I do a lot of work with family-owned companies, and succession planning is a big part of that. Now, I understand in a publicly held company, succession may be a little bit beyond your purview, but tell us a little bit about your succession plan. What does it look like? Not asking for, hey, when's Garry going to retire, but more so just how does the succession look, and what's the future of the tribe look like beyond Garry?
Well, I teach succession planning at the University of San Diego, as you probably know, in the master's program there, although it's part of another course that I do on podcast. I don't believe in succession planning.
Interesting.
I believe in bench building. If you build the bench, succession takes care of itself. So what we've been doing for 30 years is progressively building strong leadership benches in all the disciplines and all the areas of our company. So when the time comes for me to throw the keys, there's someone in the organization that will catch them, and there's a whole group of people around them that will continue to take this wonderful company to where it can go way into the future. This company does not depend on me.
Right.
I planted the seed to the tree. There's a lot of people who sit under that tree right now.
Yeah, I like that. And also, when you build a strong bench, everybody on that bench knows it's a strong bench, and they have that loyalty to each other. Mm-hmm. Have you seen any challenges in that bench building where there's been a transition in a leadership just within the organization? And how does that tribal culture that you've created create a situation where there isn't the jealousy or there isn't the issue? A lot of times in succession planning, and again, not a term that you like, I understand that, but it's a term that's used everywhere. Sometimes a person is promoted and then their coworkers, their former coworkers, have trouble. How do you prevent that in the type of culture that you've created at WD40?
I think what I've observed is a real reaction of applause, because I think people see the people that they want to lead. Mm-hmm. They know we don't have single conversations about this. This is an ongoing conversation.
It's the culture. It's discussed daily.
It's like, yeah, okay, well, that person is going to be the best person to do that job, and we want to support them. And fortunately, we've been growing, reasonably well over time, that we create new opportunities all the time. So I don't think there's a jealousy.
Sure.
If there is, it's the person who is jealous that has the problem. Their ego is probably getting, because we are very transparent about it. Yeah. I mean, it's not something, it's not a dark room full of smoke. It's
sure.
I would think that there is a fairly high degree of confidence in the organization that they could name certain people who would probably move into certain roles over a period of time and be happy about it.
Yeah, without a doubt. What excites you? When you wake up in the morning, you've created a culture, and you've talked about everybody comes to work and they're excited to be there, and the 99% of the people there say they love working there. What is it that Garry Ridge loves most about
I have
your
the
role?
most wonderful job in the world.
Yeah.
That I wake up every morning with one thing in my mind is, how do I help people create positive, lasting memories? And the most exciting thing about that is finding all the different ways to do it. So the thing that I love the most about the mornings is that I actually do wake up.
Exactly.
And then after that, I go out every day to help people create positive, lasting memories. So I'm in the memories business.
Love it. What are some of the things that you do that are unique? Let's talk about some of the details now. I know the culture, and I love everything that you're sharing. I'd love to hear and share with some of our companies and executives that are going to be watching and hearing this podcast. can you give us a few specific types of things? I mean, not the company party and we all go to the beach and picnic. I'm sure you probably do a lot of those types of things, and so do other companies. But are there unique things that you do that you haven't seen in other companies that, again, not check boxes that, hey, do these and your culture will be great, but some types of things that maybe you do that you don't see in other companies that are representative of the culture you've created?
One thing that I do is I send an inspirational message out every morning to everyone in the company.
You and Ken Blanchard.
And it's called For Today From. So if you were getting them in the last month, it would have been For Today From Ho Chi Minh City, For Today From Shanghai, For Today From London, For Today From Edinburgh.
Nice.
And it helps me be connected with our tribe. So it's amazingly the response I get to that. I do other things that people do. I write sincere notes. I think note writing is really important.
Right.
I take time to be with the people and listen to them. I don't take my cell phone into meetings. I leave it in my office. Not important. It's interesting. I was reading something the other day where it says two people were at a meeting and someone was on the cell phone and the person said, help me understand why the person who isn't here is more important than the person who's here.
Yeah.
That's a duh, right?
Absolutely.
That is a real duh.
Yeah.
So I think you have to disconnect from that. And then as an organization, we do a lot of little things. We've got a great facility here in San Diego, but it's not a Google. It's not about free food, but it's about having collision zones, as we call them, where people actually walk into each other and have to have a conversation. It's about having really meaningful leadership development training. It's about having our Fortress of Health, which is a part of our organization where, we have people come in and do lunch and learns around everything from how to cook a great meal to how to look after the health of your finances, how to plan for the future. So we have a group called Helping Hands, which is our community involvement group that all again, tribe members who do it voluntary. So it's all the sort of stuff you do in families, It's not so different.
Yeah, you want to create that atmosphere where it does feel like family, where you have that feeling of love. You haven't said the word much at all in this interview, but I keep hearing the word love. You love what you do. The people love what they do. It sounds like the people love each other. They genuinely have this feeling of love and compassion for one another.
Winnie the Pooh said in one of the, and I won't get this exactly right, but Winnie the Pooh said, what is it then when people care so much about you? And Winnie says, it's called love.
I love, you've quoted some great philosophers here, from Ken Blanchard to Simon Sinek to Winnie the Pooh. What do you read? When you're, I get, obviously you read a lot of leadership books, but are there other books out there that inspire, or authors that you like to read that inspire you in your life?
It's, having read a book and written a book and some articles and you probably have the same. I get so many books sent to me,
right?
That I get. There are certain that I like. I have a page on my website where I list the books, but a few of the books that I've really loved over life, and this one came from Ken Blanchard, is Everything You Need to Know You Learn in Kindergarten by Robert Fulghum.
Yep,
is a great book. And Ken, I know, reads that every summer, and I do as well, because it reminds me of the principles that in business are very similar. Say please and thank you, pick up after yourself. If you go out at night, have someone blah, blah, blah. Another one that I love is Shackleton's Way, the great explorer Shackleton, who there's some great leadership lessons in that. I just finished reading Out of the Maze, which is the follow-on from Who Moved My Cheese? Right. Which is great. And, of course, Simon's book, I just finished reading The Infinite Game. I've been interested in a book that I'm trying to get around, which is the latest one by, I'm going to forget it. I'm going to move on. But, Talking to Strangers is one that I've been reading recently. So it's more of those sort of books that I read than... I'm not really into novels and fantasies.
Yeah. Do you have, you said you have that reading list, and I've seen some of those on your website as well. What's the process for sharing books with your tribe members? Do you have like, here's the book I'm reading, and you want people, or I know a lot of CEOs will feel inspired to give a book to their people. Do you do much of that at all? Or?
We have a library.
Yeah.
We built a library in our new building down here.
Awesome.
That's full of books, and people can go in there and take what they like. And I'm always sharing stuff out. If I like something and I think it would be appropriate for a certain leader, I'll buy it and give it to them, which I think is worthy of doing.
Yeah. So what haven't you accomplished? That we all have goals. We all have things that are whatever's next. We all have this one big thing that we want to go out there and still do. Is there that big, hairy, audacious goal that Garry has?
No.
Yeah.
No. It's more of the same.
Yeah.
Steady as she goes.
Steady as she goes. Excellent. I could ask a million more questions, but I think I think the answer to this question you've just answered in the last 40 minutes. But the name of our podcast is called From the Hart, and it's a play on my last name. But more importantly than that, it's really the objective of why I've created this and why we've come up with this concept is to not only get into the heart of the person that we're talking to, but hopefully that whatever the person that we're talking to shares with our audience will pierce the hearts of those that watch and listen to this podcast as well. So first of all, before I ask you the question, I just want to thank you, because this last 38 or 39 minutes has been not just a look into the brain of Garry Ridge, but really a feel in the heart of what drives you. And I appreciate that. And I love how you're just transparent. And it's just obvious. If I were to ask you the question, though, right now, just in these last 40 minutes and going forward, what's in your heart right now, Garry? What would you say?
It's not about me.
Not about you.
It's about the people that we can help have a better life.
Excellent. I can't follow up any more on that other than just to say thank you. I know you're a busy man. I know you travel the world, and we've talked about that a little bit. Two things in common with our travels is recently we've both been in Vietnam, and you're from Australia, and I was there once. So I guess those are the things we have in common. But we appreciate your time today. I know that we know some of the same people. We had the opportunity recently to go down there and interview your friend and mine, Ken Blanchard. Tell me a little bit about Ken and that relationship, and then we'll wrap.
Ken and I have known each other for over 20 years now. We're very, very close friends. I love who he is. I love what he does. He's just a selfless person, and just a great human being. And just he's made such an impact on my thinking. Yeah. I will forever be grateful for having had the opportunity to be in his presence, and I am honored to call him my friend.
I would say exactly what you just said. I would just say ditto. How did it come about to write How to Win at Work with Ken?
I was in class, and he was telling the story about when he was a professor at university, and how he used to give out the final paper at the beginning of the class, and he would get in trouble from the administration. And he said, not only am I going to give out the final paper, but I'm going to help them learn the answers. And I said, oh, duh, why don't we do that in business?
There you go.
And we got together and we said, we have something we can share here that's meaningful. So we got together and we wrote Helping People Win at Work, business philosophy based on the fact that we're not here to mark your paper, we're here to help you get an A, because life is not about some stupid distribution curve, it's about getting A's.
Awesome. I love that. You wake up tomorrow and for some unforeseen reason you don't get to be the CEO of WD40 anymore. What would you do?
Take Max, the dog, for a walk.
There you go. You're already doing that.
I know.
So, excellent. Garry, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. We appreciate your time. I'd love to follow up with you soon to get you back up to Orange County and talk to our folks again at some point. Take care, bud.
Cheers.
Cheers.